to another episode of China Talk with my lovely panelists. Me? No. What episode is it, by the way? 43?
44.
44.
Mhm.
Life goes by quickly. So yeah, we had quite a large week. Everything is starting to get back and rolling again. First week of LPL. Oh, actually, the first couple games of Demacia Cup as well. We're probably going to be talking about all of those. And LSPL starting up. So, just I want you guys to introduce yourself, Kelsey, Michael.
Oh my gosh,
Em-
people know who we are.
But do they know Emily? No, okay. Anyways. Let's just get started.
No,
So,
well, yeah, welcome Emily. Emily is going to tell us about Koreans because we've probably been getting them wrong all this time. Yay!
Hey,
Yay!
fine.
you know, I like ignorance a lot. Yeah, ignorance is bliss. So, let's get started with some of the new teams that started up here. Initially, one everyone tends to care about because of the hype, Qiao Gu. So, who are the players? Let's see the histories. Let's start with Kelsey.
Okay, so one thing that I want to establish is TnT's history because it's fairly long, and I was talking to Raz about this recently, and he was like, "What? That's the same guy?" It's actually really hard to keep track of him because he keeps changing his name, like
Yeah.
every week or so. He'll probably change his name halfway through the split. Don't be alarmed. No, but he used to play for LMQ as their AD carry before they moved to North America and chose Vasily, and Vasily was actually a sub. I think Vasily played one single game during 2013 LPL, but he also played on Livermore before that, so when the two teams formed, no one cares. But he played on LMQ, and
Nice fast forward.
so that was his... LMQ was the sister team of Royal Club, so his history with UZI actually goes back pretty far. There's like kind of a mini rivalry, though it was always accepted that UZI was a little bit better. And then after the 2013 World Championship, when UZI moved to the mid lane, it was actually because they thought it would make sense to have TnT be the AD carry. However, that lasted all of like a month in an off-season tournament, which ended tragically when UZI decided to play Vayne mid against Cool's
Oh
Orianna.
god.
Also, coincidentally, the last LAN event that OMG ever won. But now he spent like a split and a half in LSPL on SPG, then on VG Stand Gaming, where he was mostly benched during his tenure. And then he joined Qiao Gu, and he was reunited with Moore, which I guess like the best periods of his career have been when he's laned with Moore.
Yeah.
It happens.
Even when he had 300, who's been hyped as a great LSPL support player. He didn't look as good as when he was with Moore, so there you go.
There we go. That's true. Like that, I was really surprised about TNT when I realized, because the guy, like, I remember when I first saw his play, it was as, yeah, there was a Avenger and then he was Sins, or yeah, I think it was like plural Sins, and he was an amazing AD carry. He played Kog'Maw quite a bit on VG Stand Gaming, and he just really tried to carry that team on his back, and so he's really good. So
Is Raz's mic staticky for anyone but me, or is it just me?
it's a good question.
It's somebody.
It's just me.
I can't really pinpoint it, but I mean, it's whatever.
Oh
Okay.
God. All right.
It's not
So-
that bad, dude.
Okay. So, what do we think of them so far? We've seen a few games from them. Are they underrated, overrated? Like, give me a standing, guys. I want to see how do you think of them so far?
Well, they've only lost one game, but the problem I have is like the sets they played.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they 2-0'd LGD, which is impressive from a standpoint of, oh my god, second place LPL team, but they 2-0'd an LGD without PYL, which is like chickens with their heads cut off. And then they went 1-1 with OMG, which, like, is okay, but OMG is still trying to, like, kickstart the strategy they were trying to do last split, but with, you know, the players on the team that are actually more supportive of the idea and more comfortable with that kind of thing. So, I mean, they looked really good for what they're hyped up for, like, you know, really good individual play. Like, I feel like V was standing up pretty well to LGD's top laners. And So I don't know. I feel like individually they're doing pretty good, but I think they're gonna have the typical LSPL problems come later on in the split when people figure out like that they're strong on an individual basis, but still have a little bit of work to do in the team play.
Mhm.
And they get out team
so.
fought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of like a lesser. It's weird. They're different. They're really similar to WE and how they've been playing. Although, like I'm familiar with Swift, right, from Korea.
And he's looking
like,
really good.
Yeah, and he was in the Zenix farm system with Coco, and then Coco joined Frost, which then brought him to Frost after a few things. And he was always kind of seen as a jungler who had a lot of like quote unquote potential. So I'm really happy to see how well he's doing. Like, in fact, I think coming out of last season, based on like if you asked a lot of people Spirit or Swift, a lot of people probably would have chosen Swift over Spirit at the time. And obviously Spirit went through last season, which kind of made him like this ridiculous god tier jungler who had to carry the rest of his team. So, but I think Qiao Gu has better individual players. Like, I feel like he has an arguably better supporting cast around him, but
I don't think it's arguable. I think
okay.
like
I think it's
pretty much every single role is
right,
better.
Like, yeah, it's like you go down the line, and
I feel like
I would say
I think mid is about even between Elite and I don't know. I think Donby is like good,
Donby-
but not like.
yeah.
I think
Like,
they both
great.
have
It's
champion
not, like,
pool
exceptional.
issues, but
Yeah.
they're both like pretty good at what they do in terms of
Yep.
laying out play on the
Yeah.
champions that they play.
So I
and
mean,
doing B. Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna say like that's how I see them. I see them as they're gonna have really similar issues to W, where their actual playstyle depends on either can Swift like carry, just straight up flat out carry them, or are their individual laners just gonna like rely on mechanical outplays? Because I haven't really seen anything super interesting from them in terms of strategy.
And I really want to see more games out of these guys to test their consistency because they did have a really good third-party run before the split of the LPL.
Mhm.
But for instance, like I really want to see how well V matches up against other top laners as the series goes on to see if he can consistently play at that level. Because like it was good that he got a good test against LGD's top laners, but that was without direction of their shot caller. And additionally, that was against it was Jiang top for the other set. So Jiang was like not looking very good, and he just occasionally died at random. So it's not a very good gauge of their performance. I really want to see their week 2 performance and then go off of that.
Why is she on top? Because OMG loves to roll swap, and they think that everyone can do it, even though they can't.
And it's so bad because he's so much more practice for even mid and then support, and they just like
Hey, he
throw him top.
played
He's like the
Lulu,
Rux of
didn't
China.
he?
Dude. He's like the Rux of China.
The Rux.
Yes.
That's actually pretty funny. That's so true.
Correct.
Yeah,
China.
it kind of works. I don't know.
All right. So is that the general idea? Is that they haven't been truly tested yet? They've gone up against LGD and OMG, although both of the teams were not really
Give all
themselves.
I do think they'll make playoffs by the end.
Okay.
But I mean, it's just such a small sample size to go off much. But just by my first impressions, I'd say they make
just
playoffs.
give Swift all the kills,
Yeah,
and he
exactly.
will carry you to victory.
Yeah, I mean, if
His
if the
teammates
team-
can actually give him kills, unlike Spirit's teammates.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if his teammates are even remotely decent, they should be good. Because all right, yeah, sure, Spirit might be better than Swift right now, but yeah, I mean, Swift has more to work with by a lot, and yeah, you can't really expect Spirit in a playoff situation to win 3 games in a best of 5 by himself because people will just focus on him and ban him out. Whereas if people do that to Swift, then he kind of has like a backup plan. It's not just like, oh, team crumbles, like oh, Spirit's champions are banned, oh, Scion's out. All right, good luck, team.
Okay. So speaking of the teams that they ended up running over because of the fact that they weren't really themselves, let's talk about the previous finalists of the LPL. LGD. What happened? They.
UL there.
I think the best way to put it is, I want to say that there's no team that's more about a single player than LGD is about PYL. That's a really strange thing to say because when I think a lot of people think about LGD, they immediately think about the carries like Whaleless or Imp or Flame or Acorn. Like, they have so many strong players on this roster, right? But just PYL, the fact that LGD's strengths, I think, are in their early game rotational play and their lane swapping, and that is like so essential to hiding their jungler. And yeah, I mean that's what happened.
Yeah, TBQ kind of continues to be an
yeah,
issue,
TBQ is
especially without direction. Like, there were a couple of times where he just would like re-engage at the weirdest times, and it's like, why did you go back in? Like, it just didn't. He just didn't seem to have any sort of semblance of understanding of like when to let things be and then when to like reinitiate. And if that comes from PYL, then it's unfortunately a problem because he's the weakest player on that team.
Yeah. So where is PYL? What's happening to him? Is there a roster swap that's happening that OMG?
Yes, they decided to completely destroy their team by putting Dada 7D2 on it. No. He's not that bad, I don't think. But he does get caught out of position quite a bit, and I was like, oh my god, there are 2 TBQs. But,
good old thing.
He's having his jaw fixed, essentially. Yeah. He has an underbite, and I think it could potentially give him his League of Legends powers, which would make them in a very poor position next split, or for the rest of the split when he does come back, but I'm hoping that's not the case, and things will just be better when he returns. The other thing is LGD really does sandbag in the regular season a lot, so you've got,
But they use it the best out of any team.
I think that
they learn the most.
It's obvious there's no shot caller right now, or no consistent shot caller. I think kind of TBQ started to become more aggressive in the second game because he's playing Lee Sin, which the eternal mystery of TBQ is how can he play like the most mechanically intensive jungle champion in the game and know what to do occasionally. I mean, his late game was still really questionable, but like his early game ganking and stuff was good.
Chuen doing Chuen things. Oh, by the way, apparently chat says I sound like a chipmunk. Do I sound normal to you guys?
Yeah, I just actually listened in, and apparently you're a little low in terms of volume, so if you can increase that up, that'd be nice.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're not squeaky?
Okay, so I don't sound chipmunky?
No. So that could just be the story of your life.
Oh my god. Okay.
You are actually a chipmunk.
Yeah.
You are.
God damn it.
Hate to break it to you.
Okay.
Rest in peace.
But yeah, in an article I actually compared LGD to Waiting for Godot, where they're just like being perpetually inactive, and they're waiting for like a higher power to come and tell them what to do with their lives, essentially. So.
And PYL is that higher power.
Yeah.
So speaking of people who need an answer, who are looking up into the sky and just wondering what's happening right now. OMG. What's going on?
Oh my god.
What is the OMG team identity? What is going on with this team?
Well, they do
actually, no, Michael.
No, I was gonna say they do have a team identity. I mean, it's not like they're. I mean, to be honest, like they don't look that bad, and they're not all over the place like they were last split. Because like last split, they were like trying to find an identity, and then they just kind of settled with, well, we have Uzi, so we might as well just funnel everything towards him. Because I mean, we have Uzi. What else are we supposed to do, right? But now they actually built the team with the players they have around the fact that they're going to devote themselves to making this protect the carry work. So essentially, OMG does have a set identity. It's just the identity from OMG is removed as we know it, if that makes any sense, because they play absolutely nothing.
Let's be frank, they didn't have that identity all last split anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's They used to have a really unique way of winning. Now they're just like another generic Chinese team. They'll probably place like middle of the pack, and then it'll just be depressing.
The Regency is at its end. Like Clearlove was like, when W crashed, they're like, "Here, sit in this chair." Clearlove was like, "Here, sit in this chair for me. I'll be back."
Yeah.
And then he came back with another dominant team. So.
Yeah.
I also think well, all I was going to say is, like, okay, I started watching China last year, right, when Star Home Royal Club with Insec and Zero. And so the way they built that team around UZI, like, it was pretty straightforward to watch, and UZI had, like, a crazy partner in Insec who would go in with him all the time, because that's what Insec does as well. And so you built this team, like, you know, Korn would always be playing Orianna. And so, like, I look at what game OMG did the best in this week, and Cool has like a 93% kill participation on Orianna, and it's just like, okay, well, the transfer still frustrates me, and like I know I wrote about this last week before the split started, but like if you're going to do this from the get-go, it just seems like such a waste.
And when you think about it, like UZI's teams have always had one dive player that kind of like zones out, and then everyone else just peels. And in Starhorn it was Insec. I think before it was, I would say it was Godlike. It's kind of like the dive player, and now I think it has to be Cool. So you can't add like an additional dive player because Cool will always like go in, I feel, and try to get a pick. That's just, even on Orianna, you could see some of his shockwaves. Yeah. He was like, we're waiting. It's like, yes! Got it! Delicious! So I think you have to build the team around knowing that Cool isn't going to necessarily be the peel, but they're still like working on making sure everyone else is standing back. And of course there's Xiang, who's just gonna like miss his thing. But
oh god.
I don't think necessarily the answer is upgrading these players, because I think it makes sense that all of them sort of understand what they're doing. Like, because people will make comments on the thread like, oh, OMG, Koro won. But Koro, he does zone and peel, but he is kind of like a dive player. He's always like going to zone out the damage dealer instead of... So if like UZI is also going, then... yeah, I don't know. I feel like the team is as good as it's going to get in terms of like the compositionally, and that the answer is not subbing out players. Like, this is hard for me to say because I really like going and leveling. They were probably my my two preferred Bash brothers, but I think that this is the better direction because OMG always choked at the finish line. They had that problem. They always had some problem with their support, so it's not like, oh, let's just go back to the old roster and everything will be fine, because that's not the true. Like that's a great roster, but they had their time. They had their single split where they won LPL and did really well in this regular season following that.
So going into this roster decision, one frequent kind of, I guess, criticism of the old team was that they couldn't find a direct shot caller, at least one of them, because everyone wanted to go in a different direction. Do you think that this change will actually resolve those in-game issues?
Oh, they got rid of their two old shot callers, so...
Yeah, they're pretty much starting fresh with the new identity.
And I think Cloud also had a voice, so they got rid of him too, and they're like, you know what? We're just, So I'm pretty sure UZI or Amazing is a shot caller, depending.
Yeah, so how do you think... I guess we don't know how their shot calling is going to go, but since... Doesn't that conflicting voice still exist, since Amazing... will still like kind of take up the role in which Cloud used to hold, but I guess there's gonna be less voices in there, so that's points a bit mute.
I think Amazing and UZI have more synergy than either UZI or Cloud or UZI and Law ever seem to have so far. In terms of like in the small sample size of games that we have, like I don't feel like there was ever a game where Cloud and UZI were on the same page, or where UZI and Law, we're on the same page, whereas I feel like all four games, there were issues in their execution, but they at least seemed like they were going for the same goal. It's just a symptom of UZI teams that you're going to be extremely inconsistent until you figure out what you're doing, and then you're going to have like one tournament where you can execute it well, and then you're all going to retire, or UZI is going to leave for another team or something. Yeah,
I mean, like, I think that the thing is just like you have to be able to accept that you have to let go of the old OMG and realize that if you are this like intent on keeping UZI in the squad, you really do have to form a whole team around him, or you're not going to get anywhere. So I do suspect that they probably will have a very mediocre split, or at least for the early stages, just as they get used to fully making this transition. But I do think in the long run, it is actually the best choice for the team as a whole. It just rest in peace, old OMG. It's not going to be the OMG we knew and loved. It's just going to be this new team doing the same strategies as everybody else, and yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's the best choice. Like if I was coaching that team, I wouldn't tell them to do anything differently if they're going to give up the old play style they had with Sen just being self-sufficient and letting the top three go into skirmish battles and
And there are
Yeah.
rumors that, like, Cool wasn't happy just having Sand on the roster, and so that's part of the reason why they went for UZI. So, if
So I
you
wanna
know
ask-
that
wait, go on.
if you decide you want to keep Cool happy, right,
Mm.
you're going for UZI, even though the two play styles don't make any sense together at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused.
They want to play together,
That
so that's
rumor.
what you're doing.
So I have 2 more questions on the OMG subject before we move on. First one is, are we happy that they're going for a more focused play style, or do we think that the skill ceiling of the team now in terms of their team play is going to be anywhere near their former selves, let's say last year OMG?
Well,
I mean, it's
go
hard to
ahead.
tell with a new shot caller. I mean, it could be, but at the same time, if you compare this OMG to the previous OMG had far weaker opponents.
Yeah.
And so their coordination stood out a lot more against weaker opposition. Now a lot of teams are getting better with shot calling and stuff like that.
Okay, so now here's the
think-
last question. Oh yeah, go on, Emily.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I am a bit concerned about Xiang top because
Yeah,
I feel
don't
like
see the
that's a
longevity in that
really
at all.
yeah, like that's a really exploitable in my opinion. Like if I was looking at that team, that's who I would pick on the most, I think. And I don't really see like I feel like he has a certain ceiling of what you can do with him in the top lane, to be honest.
And this wasn't the first time we saw him in the top lane too, wasn't it?
No, that was one tournament, and it was terrifying, and we don't speak of it.
Oh, yeah, we're talking.
He tried to play Aurelia against Sky, and Sky was just like, okay, I'll just dive you with a collie repeatedly. No one cares. This isn't even a good
Oh,
champion.
God.
But I will say that I think it's a short-term solution because my sense with like some of the announcements and some of the hinting that has been made is that this is more like a Gambit benches Diamond situation where they're hoping that Go-Going will find his motivation again. Because the big problem with Go-Going was different from the problem with Loveling, I think. Like, Loveling, everyone who's talked to him says he has a very strict sense of how he wants to play the game, how he thinks the game should be played. So you can see that going into conflict with UZI's style. So, like, you probably can't have both of them on the same team. Whereas
Yeah.
Go-Going, I think the supposition is that he became less motivated last split, and so they're trying to make him motivated again. So we'll see.
Just forced him to watch games of Qiang. He's like, I can do much
Yeah.
better than that. Come on, guys.
It's like, what? Reportedly, Diamond was like watching Gambit play in the LCS, and he was like, I understand. We're not playing as a team. We must play as a team now. I could just like Go-Going has like these man tears, and
Just please, please
Okay.
stop this torture. So the last question before we move on. This is the most important one, of course. Juju or juejue?
it's dry.
There we go. So everyone out there,
No,
please.
Juju is much more fun to say, but
It
it
is.
is dry.
Just so you guys
Now they're
know.
gonna get to Worlds and Kobe's gonna be like, by the way, guys, we asked them.
It's
Like,
Juju.
no. So
It's actually juejue.
yeah, LPL
Juicy and Juju.
He'll just change his name back to MLZZ in review by then. So
Oh my god. So next team, of course, Vichy Gaming. So they actually had one swap though going into it. And people were questioning whether because they came in with a bunch of like an ocean of 80 carries set to replace Vasily, and it looks like Endless was the one to do it. How was he?
about the same.
yeah, I was gonna say, to be completely honest with you, there wasn't enough of a difference for it to be super impactful. I don't think.
I think a lot of
I mean,
fans.
it's really hard to gauge,
I
especially
don't
when
know.
you're laning with Mata. Really.
Oh my god, the Mata effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard to gauge.
That
I mean,
is
granted-
true. That's really true.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's never gonna be easy to get a fair gauge of that.
Hmm.
Like-
so do we need more time with him to play to really figure
I
out whether
guess
he's good, or
if
is
he
that
didn't-
have we seen
like-
enough?
Like when Vici, like in both in the laning and team fights, it just didn't feel like anything was different. The only thing identifiable by Vici was that I can't really tell if they were experimenting or just really inconsistent, but there was times where they were really smart and they would split push and take advantage of the distractions on the map to get really easy objectives, and there's other times they would just completely dismiss that.
Mhm.
Yeah. It just looked the same. Like nothing really looked any different with this new AD carry.
I think since the widest, they're like the team that we have the widest sample size of, And in because they played 3 sets as opposed to 2 and
Yep.
1 in Invictus Gaming's case, and every single set, I think they lost the first game and won the second game. And I think the first game they picked like much more team fighting oriented compositions because, like Snake, I feel like VG Gaming understands that their playstyle is one dimensional and that will get them in trouble, so they want to try new things, but they don't have like the mechanical skill in their mid lane and their AD carry position to actually execute that. So they then revert to their tried and true, like, more rotation-based styles in Game 2 to try to get free objectives, and then they win games. So
Yeah.
that seems to be what's happening with VG Gaming.
So where did Endless come from? This is the first time seeing this AD carry. Does he have a past history?
I don't know, Raz. Does he? Did he play in LSPL by any chance?
I wonder.
Was he maybe on a team that you liked, like KX Happy or something?
So it's nice seeing that teams are actually looking into the LSPL to pick up players. I think that it's a good step, though I don't think it's the right player because I don't think Vasily and Endless actually have much of a discernible difference. But maybe he has a higher learning ceiling that he can get past. Who knows? So do you guys?
Wait,
Are you guys-
how is he similar to Vasily? Let's like hash that out, okay?
Oh my
Let's
god.
just make this
He
clear.
makes questionable decisions.
His decision making sometimes, if he has a lead, he won't be able to keep it. I think that's the biggest issue with him. And sometimes he isn't. I think that's just the biggest issue with him.
I also
actually,
think he's
is
bad
this-
at playing from behind, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, he had that Lucian game against Unlimited Potential, and he just got crushed in it.
Yeah.
I actually think over time Vasily grew into a certain role where he was more consistent for the team because he stopped trying to make plays. Where I feel like Endless is still in that stage where he's trying to make plays and he's trying to like be effective in the early game, and Vasily just kind of like accepted that, oh okay, Mata's gonna hook this, I'm gonna use my burst ability and then they're gonna die and this is gonna be my job. Okay, I can do that.
So I guess, yeah.
No, I
So I guess
agree.
that-
Like there were a
yeah.
couple times where Endless like just would go all in where he should have really traded, or like would miss position and give up his advantage. So
So
Mata
you-
will beat it into him.
that Endless needs more time to really flush out just kind of like those decision-making issues, or do you think they should just probably? I mean, it's the summer, like it's now or never. They should probably use what they've already gone with in the spring and just go with Vasily.
I feel like they regretted that they beat out the ingenuity out of Vasily because he no longer has any room to grow. He's just like completely submissive. And so they're trying to see if Endless will have like a thicker skin and, you know, maybe rise to the challenge and be eventually one day become the AD carry god the team needs. No?
Oh god.
Yeah.
But
Please.
then they still have Patong, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't understand
Yeah.
why they aren't like they have a mid sub too, which
Mhm.
maybe they picked up the mid sub and they realized he was worse than Hatong and they're like, oh my god, what are we gonna do now?
So
Yeah.
here comes a very smooth transition. Speaking of 80 carry gods, Snake.
Oh,
Though probably the biggest highlight of that team now comes from their mid lane. So how do you guys feel about the new Snake, new and improved?
I think is at least trying to change as a team, especially with the addition of View. It's nice to see Crystal trying to play new champions at his substitute plays. But anyway, it's nice to see him play more team-oriented stuff. Although, in order to make that team-oriented stuff work, Snake is going to have to improve their drafting a lot. They do have a lot of slip-ups in drafting. Specifically in the second game this week against Unlimited Potential is dreadful. Like their team had absolutely no synergy whatsoever. They had like a Nidalee and then like a Maokai and Yu was on Castodin, which is fine. But then all the other pieces to their team actually require a team like to do something with them. They're not all like self-sufficient, like, and it was just really bad. There was no wave clear. But no, Snake is looking better because they look like they are adaptable, and it's really nice seeing this side of Yu because on EDG, Yu is kind of pigeonholed into playing exactly what EDG wanted, and now you can see that Yu's more flexible and can play these carry style champions as well as the zoning style champions like Azir. So I mean, like I think he debuted on LeBlanc and he did really, really well on it. So I think Yu had a really good showing on this team, and I definitely think it's a huge upgrade.
LeBlanc
Like,
is
'cause you
actually
can't
his
really
most
ban him out.
played in solo queue this season.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So yeah, huge upgrade in the mid lane, I will say. But I don't know. They're looking pretty good. I still want to see more games before I evaluate too much, but for the most part, I think they're going to be better at this split than last, especially when it comes to playoffs, because it's no longer it's no longer this wave they're riding that they can just like use this one-dimensional play to win until teams figure it out and then they do nothing. Like it feels like they'll actually be able to switch it up and adapt and stuff. So they're not as predictable.
I'll throw in a slight. Oh, I'll let Emily talk.
Oh no! All I was
Emily.
gonna say is I really liked that they're finally giving Flandra some more resources, because previously, like Sneak was when they came into the LPL, previously I looked at them in LSPL and it was obvious like Flandra was kind of the point person for the team, and then Crystal was kind of just this person that they had to take care of so he wouldn't feed like too badly.
Well, that hasn't changed.
And so when they got to LPL, they kind of like put everything obviously into Crystal, and to the point where you would have literally no other carry threats on the team but whatever hyper carry Crystal was on. So I was really, really pleased to see that they're actually starting to give Flandra like some more resources, a little bit more room to actually do things and put gold on him, as opposed to sinking absolutely everything into Crystal. And to your point, I think it will make them a stronger team in the playoffs ultimately, because they won't be able to be fanned out as easily, and they won't be able to just be played against as easily, because before all you had to do is really make sure that Crystal didn't get out of control, and then where's any damage coming
Then
from?
just ban Xerath from Baka, and then that was it.
Yeah.
In his ear.
I'm gonna give you a couple caveats. The first is that, according to Yu's blog about his time returning from his time, apparently he was literally playing with the team for like 4 days before LPL started. He was just transferred there. So with that in mind, I actually kind of disagree, and I don't think that they're branching out that much. Like, sure, they have a mid laner who's playing more champions, but I think that their early game is still weak. They still suck at lane swaps, and they still just like come back in team fights, which they're much better at doing because they have a better team fighting mid laner. And even when he played LeBlanc, like, he was still kind of conservative. He just built much more damage than he typically does, because usually on his champions he builds like really safe and he goes for late game because that's what EDG trained him to do. So he started building like more offensive items and having some more offensive play, but in general he still plays very conservative until teamfight phase, and his team fighting is still like really, really insane, and they're, as a team, they're like very good at that. But Crystal will still overextend in the early game. Flandre will still like somehow starve himself in the lane swap situation. I'm waiting for Flandre to make a more proactive role, because I think Yu's style of play works really well with a top laner who just like goes in without hesitation, because Yu will immediately follow you up. He just needs someone else to like make the play first, I think. So that's kind of how I feel Snake is right now. Like, I think getting an upgrade in the mid lane helps, but they're still in a situation where they're not going to be a top tier team until they fix some of their early game problems.
And so do you think that they will be able to do so? I mean, the team so far up until this point has made, I would think, a name of, I guess, evolving and understanding their errors. Do you think that this is an error that they can resolve in terms of like their habits and general reliance on team fights rather than, I guess, laning?
I think they don't try to have a bad early game. Like, I don't think they set out and say, we're gonna lose our laning phase like really hard, guys.
Yeah, and they're not really intentionally picking late scaling champions either anymore.
We're gonna give up this early dragon and all this other stuff. I think that it just comes down to Flandre is their shot caller. He's very young. Like, I think like knowing their late game, like the way they push out the minion waves and they like slowly chip at towers and they have the side wave control that's actually really strong, is very surprising, given the fact that their shot caller is like 16 potentially. So it just depends on like how, if Flandre can figure some of that early game play out. Like against WE, when they forced Spirit onto a scaling Sejuani and he had a lot less pressure, they actually had a good early game just because WE couldn't capitalize on their mistakes. So I guess like improving draft will help in the short run, but he really needs to learn some of these, how to execute these decision making. And that's what it's going to depend on. Like, I think that he might be able to figure it out, but there's no way to know that now.
I think if there's one thing you do have to give credit to Snake, though, for, it's, like, when they came into the LPL at first, right? Like, everyone was kind of like, oh, okay, we're not really sure how this LSPL team is going to do. And they developed, like, sure, I just spent the last time I talked, like, you know, evaluating the weaknesses of said playstyle, but they developed a specific playstyle. They knew, okay, here are our limitations, you know, here's what we kind of have to do to make our way through the season, and they were really successful at it. So I think if anything speaks in Snake's favor, it's the fact that they do seem to be surprisingly adept at identifying their own weaknesses. So hopefully as they integrate you onto the team, who is just a significant upgrade in terms of like champion pool alone, they'll be able to work on that early game weakness. I would hope, because I mean, it really honestly does seem like
at least Crystal is playing Sivir.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if he doesn't quite understand how to use Spell Shield.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that surprised me, is that the fact they are, like, instead of using Martin for this sort of thing, they are just using Crystal on these supportive style champions or team fight champions, or, you know what I mean? But, yeah, I don't know, I just find that weird. Like, I didn't expect him to start all 4 games, or all of his games, especially in, the beginning of the split, because wasn't he, like, planning on taking a short little break, or...
I think the preseason was his short break, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
it?
I guess so, but I don't know. I was actually really a fan of Martin in the off season. So.
And so, how would you really relate his? Oh God, this is gonna be a horrible. I'm gonna get some really flame answers here.
I always felt like Martin was so much more self-sufficient than Crystal. Like Crystal's kind of
there you
like Baby Uzi I, where like if you don't like keep him on a leash, he's gonna like go in and just die at random. And
that one, like that play in the top lane, where it's like, why are you there? I don't understand. But he was like surprisingly better. I don't know. I think he didn't overextend, at least in team phases, much. Like I think his laning phase, he often did like these weird, questionable trade attempts, where his spell shield,
especially in Urgot, actually.
And like
he still really wants to be a playmaker. I think that's it.
And when he used spell shield against like the Nami lane, it was really weird. Like I think Conan played that well, and when you are saying that Conan plays something well, like something has gone terribly wrong.
Something must have happened.
I don't know. Yeah, it was interesting. So we'll see how he adapts, because he is a very, very popular player. He's like gonna be one of your most popular Chinese players. So that's probably why.
We also speculated like a little bit. I mean, sometimes it just helps having someone on the bench, like, you know, on your ass. Like, oh, okay, like, there's actually someone here who can play these champions better than me. And obviously, like, we just brought in this mid who's really good at team fighting. Like, so we need to kind of shift away from some of the hyper carries that I can play. So, like, I don't know. I feel like Crystal at this point might be like looking over her shoulder and being like, oh, okay, I have to actually work at expanding my champion pool now if I want to stay in the starting position. That's totally speculation, but I mean, we've seen it work on other teams. So.
And it did sound like, from reading Yu's blog, that there is actually a lot of pressure on him to be the primary carry. Like, from the way he worded it, he was like, can I carry this team? Like, can I be the carry? Every time I read Yu's blog, it's always like... so self-depreciating. He's like, I'm too old. I'm 22 going on 23. I'm not like a boy genius like Pawn is. Like,
I bet Heart's reading those being like,
Heart's like, Heart is so good. Okay, we're not going to talk about UP today, but like Heart has been really good.
We might end up. We'll see. But I do want to ask one serious question. One decision. You guys have to make one decision that'll skyrocket Snake into, I wouldn't say success, but we'll make them significantly better. What would be that decision from all of you?
I think the most time efficient improvement for the team would be really sitting down and working out drafts to like make the team work out. I mean, they didn't really have much practice in the spring, to be fair, because of how one-dimensional they were, except until the very end where they tried to switch it up a little bit. But I think like in terms of like the easiest thing they could do that would bring the most results, it's probably the best. Obviously, there's like deeper underlying issues, but I think that would be the like one thing they really need to fix. And also, like as Kelsey mentioned, lane swaps. Like Flandre has to find a way to be impactful in those situations.
Kelsey.
I think I would put Flandre on more dive champions because I think that's like where he really succeeds. So building those team compositions around like him going in more to do more initiating and like to play a more active role in the early game. So just making sure that he has more setup for success and the team plays a little bit more around him. I think as Crystal develops more self-sufficient skills, and I think he really has, like I think he's improved. I've been really hard on Crystal, but I think he's slowly improving, so yeah, and I think they're in a position where they can start to do that. And if Flandre is involved more in the early game plan, and if he's like getting him ahead is more part of the plan, then that could help him execute decisions and think about like his position a little bit more.
Okay, and Emily?
I would agree with the drafting thing. I think, like as Mike said previously, they were so one-dimensional that it was really easy for opponents to figure out their draft, and they were very obvious because they had to pick certain champions in order for their plan to succeed. And I think now with a lot more flexibility, like in terms of where they're going to actually dedicate resources to on that team, they need to understand better how to like pick for their team, like pick for the players' strengths in terms of what they want to do, if that makes sense.
I think it is a work in progress, though. I don't think they're just blindly not doing anything to fix the old problems they had. I mean, they are still doing really well. Like their first 4 games, they did really well. And I don't know, maybe the movement is a little bit slow towards that sort of thing, but I have faith that they can adapt. Just because, I mean, they're not the most adaptable team we've seen, but they're if you compare their summer into their spring, they don't really have to do much. Yeah, exactly.
Like, and I mean, time remains to be seen whether they can adapt to them. The other thing that we do have to keep in mind, which was the point that was made when we first started talking about this team, is they did face unlimited potential in Team WE. So, like, obviously they're going to have stiffer competition coming up in the next few weeks. And so hopefully they were actually able to like learn something from these first 2 games and adjust like fairly quickly, or like identify 1 or 2 things to work on before going up against their next opponents. Because let me check to see who their next opponents even are. Yeah, their next opponent is EDG, which we'll talk about shortly. But EDG and then King.
Bam.
Oh, yeah. So, bam. I gotta take this chance to use that as a segue into the EDG portion of this. Bam.
Bam.
This is why we have you on the show. Thank you. So, okay.
You're the host Raz needs.
So, first question. All right, EDG's coming back to the split. Everything's looking fine. Oh wait, where's Karo? What happened, guys? What happened to the best top laner, debatably, in the world? Koro. Kelsey?
You didn't need the debatably caveat.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
I think he's the best top laner in China. You can maybe argue like Duke or Smeb. I think.
Oh, that's
also.
true. Yeah, that's fair.
I would say Duke is in there. Smeb.
And I think you can make a case for Acorn. Obviously, Acorn without PYL maybe less so, but.
So what's going on with Koro 1? What's happening with what's being said on the Chinese boards in rumors-wise? Or do we even want to talk rumors? Because we don't.
Apparently,
no one
posted on his QQ that he's been benched, but it's very vague. Like that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
He's benched. They said he and Sanshao in like the mid-game interview again. Sanshao, who embellishes everything.
Yeah.
Sanshao,
apparently,
Mr. Pan is dying. Someone please.
Oh, wait. From the hospital. Ripped out his IV.
Mr. Sanshao. But he said that they're working on developing new talents, and they'll even like look into benching Deft at some point, so that their sub AD carry can play. Please, God, no.
See, I would be okay with that only if we have Ray to play those games.
Yeah, see
And
if Ray would play, but the thing is that would be like if they play like By Me, and then Jin Zhao and Ray's like, oh my gosh, I thought I got away from this.
I
I thought I escaped.
I thought
Please no.
he's like forced to play Kale just to carry those games.
They brought these scrubs along with me.
But yeah, they're looking into developing new talent. I think it's interesting because I don't think you can debate that since joining EDG, like across the board, Koro, Clear Love, Pawn, Deft, Mako, all grew into interventions and all became like really significant. I think significantly stronger players than they were before.
Yep.
So I think that they're obviously seem to be good at developing talent. So if that's what they're focusing on, then we might see Amazing J like one day learn to team fight, or By Me one day learn to consistently hit a skill shot, or
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I mean, Amazing J got the basics down with like flanking Hecarim and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, I think one thing that people need to be fully aware of when they're watching EG to split, which is going to be needed to be reiterated repeatedly, because otherwise people are going to make like false assertions about the team's performance when they're completely different objective based than they were previously. So I mean, now that they won Spring and they won, the mid-season invitational, they're just trying to build up new talent. And if that's really going to be their objective the entire time, I don't know what you guys think, but I don't really think they're going to come out first. I mean, as much as it would be funny to have Amazing J be like an LPL champion, like, I don't know.
It
I
depends.
mean, because and this is just like the beginning. We haven't seen their other subs, and from what I've heard, is they're pretty much going to be using all of their subs to split, and training all of them up. So,
Kelsey?
So it's kind of, I think that they're like, okay, we're going to give these guys, like, they wanted to build ADG, so they bought this ADG team, but ADG didn't perform to expectations in the LSPL, so they're like, okay, maybe we can teach these players who we saw something in the first place, and that's why we signed them, to be good players if we put them in a game with, like, an experienced player like Clear Love. And I think that's kind of what they're doing, is they're like, oh, maybe Clear Love can teach them things, like how to jungle without jungling. No. But so I think that's kind of where they're going, and they've, like, a lot of the players that they picked up have been very young. It's weird to me, because By Me is, like, 21, so if your argument is that they're investing into really young talent, like, Pawn is, like, 3 years younger than him, so that's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, very young players, like Ray is extremely young, Amazing J is younger than Koro, Mako is very, very young, right?
Yeah.
So,
Baby Mako.
I do think that if this split does turn out to be successful for EDG, that puts them in a really good spot. Like, if they are still a top team with all these new players, that's going to, like, enhance their main roster strength even more, because then they're going to have a practice. Like, and essentially they're going to have a secondary team to scrim with that's really, really powerful too, and also bodes well for them in terms of LSPL or the team advancing into LPL, which will no longer be in their hands anymore. But I mean, at the same time, they're still going to have that kind of like sisterly bond, but they'll have a really good scrim partner.
On the other hand, it is definitely a gamble, because I think that an advantage of the 44 games that LPL teams play is that if you have a mixed language roster, you build your communication and your team plan very well, because you just do it all the time. Like, you're playing in a professional setting constantly. So if you use that wisely to build a communication plan, and Aaron said he wanted to improve, like, the macro strategy of the team, which, like, the early macro strategy has been, like, a weak point of EDG against teams like LGD. So I think that is still a risk, because if you have other teams that are continuing to improve while you're working on developing new talent, you might fall behind more than expected. So I do think that they are gambling when they could, in theory, make their main roster that much more impressive and, like, work on more advanced strategies with this time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they really do
So-
feel like they're that far ahead of the curve, where they think that this isn't going to change the fact that they'll be the best team in China. Because I can't imagine they would make a decision like this
And
unless
if
they
their
were
goal is
confident of
worlds,
that.
right? Like they always
Right.
talk
Yeah.
about worlds. Like Clearlove makes it clear that he does not care about anything at this point except winning worlds. So if
I
that's
don't
their objective, then they might be falling behind. Like they definitely need to beef up the macro strategy queue because you have to think that the Korean teams are going to improve this aspect as well a lot. So I don't know. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, I'm actually a huge I'm not a huge fan of this move at all by EDG. Like I actually really dislike it, and it's because
Yeah, I think it's a bit cocky.
I went through and saw we saw all the kind of effects of having a rotating roster in Korea and how they tried to execute that. And from what it looks like, SK Telecom, the most successful kind of version of that, is still attempting that, just based on their performance in the first week. Although one could also argue that they didn't have the best competition, obviously, so they didn't really have to, bust out the big guns. But in terms of I just don't. I feel like the whole reason why EDG was so successful last split, and Kelsey kind of touched upon this, is that they had that time to develop their communication. They had that time to develop how they were going to coordinate, and you saw them improve just in team fighting alone significantly, and especially with if you're looking at how Deft and Pawn performed in Korea in terms of how they actually both, I think, honestly became more well-rounded players on EDG because they had to work through that communication system, because they were constantly trying to improve as a team and trying to fit them into this to this newer environment. So, and I think you lose a lot of that if you're just constantly switching out players. I still I was undecided, and I was like, okay, I'll see how SKT does at MSI, because their performance in Korea, from going through the playoffs, I thought it was a really impressive use of how you would switch out players. But I honestly I really don't like it. I don't like this move. I feel like there's a lot more. It can pay off, but I feel like the ways you could screw it up are a lot more numerous than ways you can be successful at it, I guess.
Well, we'll see if we are still praising Aaron as a god at the end of the split, or if we begin to question our idol again, like we did in 2013. So
We always question him.
we must
And it
question
always-
him.
To
WE's
me-
great collapse is always hanging over his head.
Oh boy. Yeah, this team, for me, it's probably the worst move since moving the. I'm not gonna be able to put this pun past it. I was trying to make
Actually,
a new jungle pun from ADG, and I was like, not gonna happen.
I actually am less upset because I think most people are more outraged by Koro being benched for Amazing J than they were for you and Name being benched for Pawn and Deft. But I think
Yeah.
I was a little bit more upset by that because I didn't really understand where they were going, because I think that they overreacted to one tournament, but obviously what they're doing is saying, oh, in some cases we're going for younger players, we're going for more approaches, we're trying to stay ahead of the meta, we're trying to do this, we're trying to make this aspect, we want to inject this Korean mentality into our environment, now we want to build up players for future generations. So they're just I think it's almost that 2013 WE collapse is kind of haunting him a little bit, because he's they failed to anticipate meta changes. They failed to be prepared for when OMG was 5-man diving them. And I don't know. We'll see if he's overreacting or if this is a really solid move. I think it could go either way.
It could also be a decision based on player feedback too. If some of the players if there's more than one player on the team that's planning on retiring after this year, it could be a decent investment. Because we don't know if the players that are on... I don't know the contracts of BDG, but I can assume that would be somewhat of an influence on the decision.
It sounds like Korra wants to keep playing. From his post, he does sound like he wants to keep playing. Clearlove probably depends on whether or not he wins Worlds. Maybe he'll retire if he wins Worlds.
Yeah.
He's thank God, finally!
It's happened.
I'm done.
I can be
Here's
done.
Yeah. But I
That's
wanted
always
to-
the question, is what happens to Aaron after Clearlove retires, right? So.
Hmm. But do you think they'll be able to get the correct answer with how the environment currently is in the LPL? Like, for instance, let's say he runs Amazing J every game. What happens? Do you think they're actually going to lose a game? Do you think that they're actually going to have a bad performance against...
Well, they lost a game.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But, like, as in, are they going to have, like, a bad performance overall?
I actually think it makes more sense to have Amazing J and Baimi in the same position, because I think Baimi will play like a little bit more reserved for like the late game team fights. He's not like good at it exactly, but that's more his mentality
They're
and
working
his
on that.
play style, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have Amazing J and Pawn in the same game, they'll both be like trying to dive the Nexus or something. I don't know. And then like Def's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" But oh my gosh, Deft is so good at like timing his summoner spells and his cooldowns and anticipating those things, so like they can kind of get away with it, but obviously not consistently, because they lost to VG Gaming, and they got pentakilled by Hatong.
Yep.
God.
Yep.
Which I was thinking about that play in my head, and like Clearlove goes in, right? Then immediately you usually have the top laner follow up, but I don't know what Amazing J was doing. He was like off to the side, hopping around or something, playing mini Gnar. So
Yeah, when I saw that team fight, I actually thought that EDG's engage in like actual like the way they set up the team fight was okay, but their focused fire was miserable.
and the way that Hatong
They didn't get rid of any of the threats.
the way that Hatong used the disengage screwed them, because I think that if you had like the jungle and the top laner go over simultaneously, that would have gone a lot better, because Clearlove wouldn't have immediately died. But I think that's something they can work on with communication, and if they do develop their talent, like they say they will, and like they plan on doing, so... Growing pains, I'll give that one to them. Obviously, I don't think it would have happened if Koro were there, but, you know, whatever.
I don't think so either. Because I mean, like the whole thing is like, oh, Amazing J is the split pushing carry champion, and Koro's a team fight champion. But I think Koro's obviously proven that he's also capable of doing the carry thing better than Amazing J, even just because he's a better player.
Yeah. Yeah, the worst thing about the whole discussion that surrounds Koro is that people will say, well, he's more focused on team fights, but then they fail to realize that he's multi-talented. Like, sure, he's able to use team fights extremely well, and like the team will really surround him extremely well. Like his team play is superb, but like people fail to realize that his laning phase is significantly better. Not even better, but like it's the best. Like it is the best. Like actually,
just like Pawn is the best player in the fight. Go so far as to say
I don't want
that.
to say the best in the world, but in the region, it's the best.
I don't even know.
I'm open.
I do think that I think Flame's laning phase is like really good for the most part.
Consistently. That's the
We're
real
not
question.
going to talk about LGD as if they're an actual team right now. We're going to talk about LGD like last split. So, the I think the thing with Korra though is you have to remember going back. Like, I was pretty much the only one who thought he was good.
Yep.
So his laning phase was truly atrocious in the past. Like truly atrocious. Like worse than Amazing J's team fighting is now. So, like I said, if they're good at that took him an entire year though, so I don't know. Does Amazing J have an entire year to learn to team fight?
It's
like
a
Korra?
drastic shift, because it's not just going from someone that's decent at something to someone that's worse at something. It's going from the best team fighting top in the world probably to Amazing J, which is like just ridiculously drastic. And I can't imagine how uncomfortable that is, especially for Clearlove.
And
It's just bad.
Korra is his little disciple, his little wing chicken.
Yeah.
That made no
Wing
sense.
chicken.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
what wing
I don't know
chicken
what that is, but you know, I'll just agree with it.
Well,
I thought it was
except-
okay.
Okay.
All right, before we devolve into delirious discussions like me going on through the LPL matches in 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 in the morning, I don't know. Either way.
I've started watching LPL with Raz. Like, this is something I've never actually done before. And at certain points in the morning, he just, like, he starts to agree with everything you say, and then you can just say random shit, and he's like, yeah.
At certain point.
No.
Yeah, I think Aaron should actually be the top laner instead of Amazing J. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
He's smart. He's got this.
totally. Okay.
Levered of like usually I'll go to sleep before the last game because either the last game's gonna be a piece of shit. I'm just gonna put this out there. Last game's usually sometimes it's like it's not worth watching, or I'm just too damn tired. I'm like I'm gonna watch the VODs later on. But I've decided to force myself to not watch the VODs, and that's been a horrible decision overall.
It's like if Amazing Jay is there, I'm just gonna sleep.
I'm like I'm done with this. This is not what I want to watch. This is. So yeah, I want to overall since I want to back away from the specific LPL discussions. Before we're done with the LPL discussions, I want to ask you guys what really stood out for you this week that we really haven't discussed here, like either World Elites, oddities, or Demacia Cup even. So have at it. I want to start with Emily since she hasn't talked as much as I'd like her to.
I think. I thought, I mean, we already touched upon it. Snake's decision to kind of play with their what their players can do, I thought was really interesting. Also, I mean, this is like probably not something that we wanted to talk about, but like watching Team King just breaks my heart.
I can't watch Jinx games after that anymore.
Royal Club Dismantled Edition.
I'm sorry to bring it up because, like, I know everyone's gonna be, like,
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that we'd like talk about this next week, where maybe we could give them like another week to figure out what they're doing with their Korean players. But it was just sad.
Like, really sad to watch. And Nami,
the first day we were like, where? The first day we were like, where's Name? Why aren't Name, Inzik, and Zero playing? And the second day it's like, yay, Name! No. No. Bring Ao back, please. God, this is too painful.
This is not what I wanted.
That was so bad. I think the
Dream is sinking.
I think the most. I mean, maybe it's not surprising.
The Name dream is sinking, is what he said.
Oh God.
Oh no.
I didn't catch that. That was terrible.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the most surprising thing, even though I like kind of anticipated it, was just like I understood that without PYL LGD would kind of not be as good, but I didn't really expect it to be that bad. Like the team, the difference is phenomenal. It's just insane how good LGD is with PYL versus they're showing this week. It was so bad. Like they just look completely clueless. And the games that they lost, they weren't like close defeats. They were just getting crushed. It was embarrassing, honestly. I was really surprised.
King, it reminded me of watching King games last year where they just like did nothing and passively lost for like. They literally don't have a backup shot caller. They're just like, we're gonna maybe
no one just talks, like everybody's just quiet if UL's not there.
This is an Elements
like
game.
alt tabbing to play like a Hearthstone turn or like some or something. Going back to the game. Oh hey, I made it back to top lane. All right.
Elements. Anyway,
One point. Oh yeah, go on.
Sorry. I think the thing that stuck out the most to me was probably that WE is still the same. That stuck out the most to me. I mean, they lost a game this morning to Legend Dragon, which...
yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay, they had hard games, but I mean, and then that happened, I'm like, okay.
And then, it wasn't even like that. It was like the first two games were ridiculously close too. Like, so even the games that they won were. And then the third game they completely stopped because Legend Dragon was just like, let's just keep going back to the lane where they 5-man dive us, and let's just keep letting them do that repeatedly, and then let's not do anything else on the opposite side of the map, and let's just pass it. But just like, okay, cool, good stuff.
Championship silver medal, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. I wasn't able to watch the Demacia Cup this morning because of the time conflicts with the Oceania games, but I'll watch it later on. But what's one thing like that stood out? What was the roster? Because I noticed that the Legend Dragon. God.
Oh, actually, Kabi is actually a really good top laner. I was like really surprised. Again, he was playing against the Luca, so I mean.
Yeah.
But he was really solid. Like his like backdoor trundle skills were top notch, man. Like.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's the best top forward trundle backdoor in this competition of like 3 people.
Yeah, there's
Hey
like
man, Koro's
Flandra.
the king of Trundle, alright?
Flandra, let me
No
in.
fucking Koro Trundle.
Yeah, Koro's Trundle's so good.
Yep.
More
I
sadness.
miss it so much.
Speaking of all of that, I want to like transition because I think that's I love how you guys just feed me these nice transitioning. I don't know. I can't think of the word specifically, so I'm making myself
I think you
seem.
should just stop at transitions and you would be
Yeah,
fine.
transition.
I
There we
think-
go.
I think you should just transition. Actually,
I should just transition. So, anyways, top laners in the LSPL. A lot of things that like LSPL now is looking interesting. Everything is starting to line up. All the teams are looking, other than Group D, where there's just a. That's probably the most hilarious part, by the
because
way.
they're like 3 really good teams, and then like this 4th team was disqualified, so it's literally
Yeah.
just 3 really good teams.
Yep. So it's an awkward situation. I don't think there's gonna be more games played. The schedule came out. I need to read that. So it just means that a lot more is put on the line for the games that have to be played because they don't have a free win. But yeah, on the top lane situation, there has been a weird thing that's been happening. For instance, like Kabe in the top lane, that's completely fine because I think he's gonna be, like, he's a much more mechanically skilled person. I think that's just what comes from being an AD carry, I suppose. I don't know. That's the CLG dream. Put an AD carry top lane and you have something gold. But at the same time, ADG. This has been.
I mean, Sao Mei and Wei Xiao, the magical 80 carry top lane swap, right? So
Yeah. But like this has been something really confusing to me because ADG now, because for whatever reason they moved Ray from the B team to.
That's so weird. I don't
It's like-
understand.
They're not gonna use him unless if they take out Def. But then why are you taking out Def?
To play Jin Zhao.
So Ray has been taken away from ADG. ADG is completely fucked. But no, like I think
No,
that,
they really are. Unless Lan is like a god. Unless Lan
Yeah.
is the new Ray. Like,
yeah, like apparently they're using mouse for top lane.
Yeah.
That's I think that's happening.
I
and
think
it's like
they're all Chinese too.
yeah.
Which, because they moved both of their Koreans too.
So ADG is gonna have some problems, and I think it's because I honestly don't agree with the idea that they have in terms of growth of their players. Because like, what growth is Ray gonna be doing not playing a game? That's my question. Like LSPL, for what it is, it's competitive.
Maybe Ray was just like, please save me, please God, I can't.
You wanted
me
to
away
be
from
safe.
You can't.
So
You can't leave me here. Please no.
they're just like looking at him like, we should probably do something about this.
You should just like get a team with like Ray and Spirit and Name. See
Oh, God.
please free them.
Yeah. So, but LSPL as a whole is gonna be interesting. I think there's definitely gonna be a shift in powers, but at the same time, it's gonna be a bit of the same. So I'm just gonna look through. Should we do like? I'm gonna do like top 4 teams. That's
Yeah, give
100%.
us your top 4 teams
Yeah.
to watch, Raz.
Top 4 team. This is hard. I'm gonna say newbie because newbie is they're of course they're a new organization. Really, not
They
really
just
new.
got
new
3-0'd
to-
by Wii Future. W
Yeah,
Future.
that's really sad.
Yeah.
But I think the players just need time to really build up. It's really difficult. I don't know if they're gonna be the OMD of this season or not. They may need, you know what? They may need more time. So I'm gonna go with the safe bet and say first Legend Dragon. I've always been on the Legend Dragon hype train, and I think that getting rid of it was Potato, right? Love Eat Potato.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Love Eat
Yeah.
Potato.
I
R.I.P.
think
Love Eat
Potato.
Potato.
Bye, webcam.
That's
Did you forget that the soda can that you balance your webcam
Hey,
on
I haven't done
wasn't
that in,
actually
like,
drinkable,
6
and
months,
you're just
okay?
like, I'm gonna take a sip, man.
Let me just. Oh wait a minute.
Okay.
But I think
Oh, man.
I think getting rid of Love Eat Potato, as much as I love the name, is the best decision you can make because I think the idea that he's always had was that he would be stable in the top lane, and if another top lane god would face him, he would just crumble. And that's what happened last season with last split with when they went up against DK, Team DK, the team that was horrible except for Limit in the top lane, and Limit just completely demolished him. You're like, wow, this is sad. but he got carried.
Why
in that
is
ball.
Limit in the car?
Oh, why?
Yeah. Like,
Okay,
I'm
that
not
was random,
super
sorry.
high on Limit.
I was wondering what joke. I still don't get the reference, but I laughed simply because that was the most random shit.
Well, it's the new LSPL intro because we know that Save is going to be an LSPL now, right?
Yeah.
So they have
Yeah.
like the intro where they're showing everyone coming down. They even show Limit coming down and everyone's like gathering and then there's like some stuff thrown and they're like, ah, and there's this random woman
Random
dancing.
What? I need to see this.
Everyone loves random women. And then there's like this car that comes in, like this really nice car. I didn't check what it was. I should probably
Yeah.
go back and look. But then, so you're expecting Save to come out of this car, right? Because this would be like the most beautiful entrance. And then they open the door and it's Limit. And you're just
Well,
like, why?
Did he
Why
have
is this Limit?
responsibility because he was probably going at the speed limit. He never. I need to really stop making these jokes. I actually kind of like a little bit of myself die. With my jokes.
So, yeah.
But Legend Dragon, I think Legend Dragon's amazing. I want to say World Elite Future, but my biggest issue is that I don't trust the World Elite organization to really keep the team intact.
They
'Cause
have
whenever it
957 is back.
He's back, but for how long? I mean,
They,
Khan
I
now.
don't think Khan is even on their roster anymore.
No,
is
he's
he?
on newbie now. But
Yeah, so.
but like, who else are they gonna use? They're gonna like actually.
I don't
you
think
know,
they have any top lane subs on their roster. I
until they
checked it.
decide. Until they decide Aluka, they found a replacement to Aluka. You never. I don't know. I don't. I'm always open to surprises with that team. So I'm for now. I'm gonna say World Elite Future is gonna be in the top 4, but I think I'm very flexible for that dropping. With my faith in that
So
team.
we have so far we have Legend Dragon, World Elite Future. Okay.
And then Showtime. I think Showtime right now. They have made a single swap in the roster. I've heard. I haven't seen that game, so I'm really
They
sweating
got
bullets.
they got rid of their jungler, who I thought was really solid.
Ah,
I forget what team he's on now, but he's on another LSPL team. I'll have to look it up again.
Okay, that makes me sad. I still think Showtime is gonna be a really solid team. Top 4. Geez, this is the difficult portion. I'm going to say Hyper Youth Gaming. No. You know what? Young Glory. I don't. I'm
Say,
not
what
gonna.
about
I'm gonna
Save?
yeah, Young Glory. I'm gonna
See,
go with
they
Young.
didn't put him in the car. We don't care.
We don't care. Like as much as I think the Hyper Youth Gaming team has like potential, especially with the random changes that they have
But
there.
do they have VG Gaming potential?
You know what? That's the joke that I would make. Please stop.
Exactly.
Potential.
By the way, people who don't know what Hyper Youth Gaming is, it's a team that's kind of random. They purchased, or at least they took, yeah, I think they purchased the main Energy Pacemakers team. So they have a weird mix-up of players. They have 17. Everybody knows and loves if you've watched.
Yeah, XQ
Yeah.
though.
They have XQ. See, that's
Ah,
what-
yes.
They have JoJo and Raphael. So,
I'd
I wanna-
rather see them play
LPL
Raphael.
veterans in that team.
yeah.
I think Raphael is better than JoJo though, so
Mm.
I'd rather
And then-
see them play Raphael.
And so here's the of course there's Siu. I think that's how you say it, Siu.
Shu, yeah.
Siu. Okay. And here's the major thing. Their jungler is named YOLO. That's
Oh,
the
God.
first.
Please
His name
no.
is YOLO. That is hilarious, but his history may surprise you. His last
Yeah.
team, Winter Fox.
Yep.
His previous name, Imagine. He was the fucking support. of Winter Fox. And so now he's their jungler. I don't know how.
Imagine all the
I guess
people.
Drizzle. Imagine. I see what you're trying to do. That was
Yeah.
pretty fun. But I think that's an interesting change. I want to see how that works. I don't know what happened to Drizzle, and maybe he heard my comments and took it too personally.
That's like they invited him to this team and he didn't really speak Chinese, right? So they're like, so what is your name? And he thought they were asking, like he hadn't realized he'd already given his permission to join because they were just accepting that he would accept this massive offer. And so
Yeah.
he thought they were still asking him to sign the contract and he was like, YOLO.
Yeah. That's the worst.
It's the worst story I've ever
That's
told.
the worst story.
Ever.
Please.
Raz started it.
This is what happens when you hang out with me. Please stop this.
Raz started it.
Terrible.
Okay, let us continue with not bad jokes.
Alright, so those are my top 4 teams. I think this is going to be pretty interesting. I think the cutest name or, like, logo of the LSPL, the award, goes to T-Bear Gaming. But that's just now I'm going on random tangents. So there's just, with that being
T-Bear
said,
Gaming, yeah.
T-Bear Gaming.
That might be the one that
compared
got...
to Panda Cub Hugging Club.
That might be the team that got Go Eat, actually.
Yeah, they do, yeah. They have Go Eat. Oh my god, they have Go Eat.
T-Bear Gaming has Go Eat.
This is going to be the greatest team. Alright, with that being said, I think we got everything off. I think we've finally got all of the lists and points across until for next week.
We're probably
So-
going to try to like alternate teams we talk about a little bit, or as stuff
Yeah.
comes up, just to keep the episodes a little bit shorter. So
Yeah, that's fair. Alright, so let's do shoutouts, everybody. I'm going to start with Mikhail Drexen.
Alright, so shoutouts to, okay, half of the panel has written. Half of the panel has written about why OMG is bad. Now we're just waiting for the other half to write articles about how OMG is bad. So you
my
can
article is
find
going to be like an epic story about how they played in 2012 and they kept swapping the rosters and the junglers that they used to have and how
So-
Going played mid that
sounds
one tournament.
fantastic.
So mine's on Esports Heaven and Emily's is actually also on the score. And Kelsey's making one that she said she'll release like next week or something, and now
I have
Raz
no
has
idea
to
when
write an
I'll release
OMG
it, but-
article.
Oh
So Raz has to start that, so we all 4 of us have
just gonna
be
make
rating
mine-
OMG Uzi articles.
I'm just going to be making mine more commemorative instead of like saying, "Oh no, the team died." Spoiler for Emily's and Drexen's article. So.
Why do you gotta get about the TLDR, man?
I know. Mine was,
The
hey,
article.
both teams died.
Oh yeah, hers
Yeah.
is about Starhorn too.
Hers took it
so.
a step further. I just,
Yeah.
yeah. Mine was
This
mostly
transfer
just be
screwed
rating
over
Uzi
both
for half the
teams.
article, and then be rating OMG for the other half. So,
How much like prep Kelsey's doing, I'm expecting some like Final Fantasy like long epic story.
Yeah, you
just,
guys
like-
thought my Name article was long. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and let's go on to Emily.
Shout out to, I guess, LPL Esports.
I
for
guess
playing
LPL.
me. I know. Shout out to
Yeah.
LPL
You're
Esports.
as good at
There
this
you
as
go.
Raz is.
And then,
So.
I know, I'm not really good at shout outs. And then, shout out to the score for having a few of my pieces this week as well, so.
There you go.
yeah.
Okay, Kelsey.
Yeah, so we actually have Emily on here. She as like a joke because she cares much more about Brazil and Korea. So check out her articles on that if you're interested in those regions.
Joke.
And yeah, also I don't know. One day Raz will do something. Watch OPL because he coaches the team.
Wow.
Did the teams win today? Did they win?
So. 'Cause he
Fair
coaches
Ooh.
a team in OPL, so that's my shout out. He coaches the Chiefs. They were at the mid-season invitational, so good job them. And shout out to the Score Esports because they employ me.
Perfect. There we go. Should I do my own shoutouts if I'm the host? This is the real question. I don't think so. I think I've already did my own shoutouts, so
I did your shout out for you.
Yeah.
thinking ahead. All right, guys. Let's in memory of Frost. Everybody, wave your hands as we close the stream.
Preferably.
History with UZI actually goes back pretty far. There's like kind of a mini rivalry that was always accepted that UZI was a little bit better. And then after the 2013 World Championship, when UZI moved to the mid lane, it was actually because they thought it would make sense to have TnT be the AD carry. However, that lasted all of like a month in an off-season tournament, which ended tragically when UCI decided to play Vayne mid against Cool's
Oh,
Orianna.
God.
Also, coincidentally, the last LAN event that OMG ever won. But now he spent like a split and a half in LSPL on SPG, then on VG Stand Gaming, where he was mostly benched during his tenure. And then he joined Qiao Gu, and he was reunited with Moore, which I guess like the best periods of his career have been when he's laned with Moore.
Yeah.
It happens.
Even when he had 300, who's been hyped as a great LSPL support player, he didn't look as good as when he was with Moore. So there you go.
There we go. That's true. Like that, I was really surprised about TNT when I realized, because the guy, like, I remember when I first saw his play was as, yeah, there was a Avenger and then he was Sins, or yeah, I think it was like plural Sins, and he was an amazing AD carry. He played Kog'Maw quite a bit on Invictus Gaming, and he just really tried to carry that team on his back, and so he's really good. So
Is Raz's mic staticky for anyone but me, or is it just me?
It's a good question.
It's somebody.
It's just me.
I can't really pinpoint it, but I mean, it's whatever.
Oh
Okay.
God. All right.
It's not that bad, dude.
Okay. So what do we think?
Bad because he's so much more practiced for even mid and then support, and they just
Hey,
like
he
throw him
played
top. He's like the
Lulu,
Rux of
didn't
China,
he?
dude. He's like the Rux of China.
The Rux.
Yes.
That's actually pretty funny. That's so
The
true.
Rux.
Yeah,
China.
it kind of works. I don't know.
All right. So is that the general idea? Is that they haven't been truly tested yet? They've gone up against LGD and OMG, although both of the teams were not really
Give all
themselves.
I do
Yeah.
think they'll make playoffs by the end.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I mean, it's just such a small sample size to go off much. But just by my first impressions, I'd say they make
Just
playoffs.
give Swift all the kills,
Yeah,
and he
exactly.
will carry you to victory.
Yeah, I mean, if
His
if the
teammates
teams-
can actually give him kills, unlike Spirit's teammates.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if his teammates are even remotely decent, they should be good. Because all right, yeah, sure, Spirit might be better than Swift right now, but yeah, I mean, Swift has more to work with by a lot, and yeah, you can't really expect Spirit in a playoff situation to win 3 games in a best-of-5 by himself, because people will just focus on him and ban him out. Whereas if people do that to Swift, then he kind of has like a backup plan. It's not just like, oh, team crumbles, like,
Yeah.
oh, Spirit's champions are banned, oh, Scion's out, all right, good luck, team.
Good. So speaking of the teams that they ended up running over because of the fact that they weren't really themselves, let's talk about the previous finalists of the LPL. LGD. What happened? They.
UL there.
I think the best way to put it is, I want to say that there's no team that's more about a single player than LGD is about PYL. That's a really strange thing to say, because when I think a lot of people think about LGD, they immediately think about the carries like Whaleless or Imp or Flame or Acorn. Like, they have so many strong players on this roster, right? But just PYL, the fact that LGD's strengths, I think, are in their early game.
Think of them so far. We've seen a few games from them. Are they underrated, overrated? Like, give me a standing, guys. I want to see how do you think of them so far?
Well, they've only lost 1 game, but the problem I have is like the sets they played.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they 2-0'd LGD, which is impressive from a standpoint of, oh my god, second place LPL team, but they 2-0'd an LGD without PYL, which is like chickens with their heads cut off. And then they went 1-1 with OMG, which, like, is okay, but OMG is still trying to, like, kickstart the strategy they were trying to do last split, but with, you know, the players on the team that are actually more supportive of the idea and more comfortable with that kind of thing. So, I mean, they looked really good for what they're hyped up for, like, you know, really good individual play. Like, I feel like V was standing up pretty well to LGD's top laners. And so, I don't know, I feel like individually they're doing pretty good, but I think they're going to have the typical LSPL problems come later on in the split when people figure out, like, that they're strong on an individual basis but still have a little bit of work to do in the team play.
Mm-hmm.
And they get out
thing,
team
so.
fought.
Yeah. I think they're kind of like a lesser. It's weird. They're different. They're really similar to WE and how they've been playing. Although, like I'm familiar with Swift, right, from Korea.
And he's looking
like,
really good.
Yeah, and he was in the Zenix farm system with Coco, and then Coco joined Frost, which then brought him to Frost after a few things. And he was always kind of seen as a jungler who had a lot of, like, quote-unquote potential. So I'm really happy to see how well he's doing. Like, in fact, I think coming out of last season based on like if you ask a lot of people Spirit or Swift, a lot of people probably would have chosen Swift over Spirit at the time. And obviously Spirit went through
To another episode of China Talk with my lovely panelists. Me? No. What episode is it, by the way? 43?
44.
44. Life goes by quickly. So yeah, we had quite a large week. Everything is starting to get back and rolling again. First week of LPL. Oh, actually, the first couple games of Demacia Cup as well. We're probably going to be talking about all of those. And LSPL starting up. So, just I want you guys to introduce yourself, Kelsey, Michael.
Oh my gosh, people know who we are.
But do they know Emily? No, okay. Anyways. Let's get back. Let's just get started.
No,
So,
well, yeah, welcome Emily. Emily is going to tell us about Koreans because we've probably been getting them wrong all this time. Yay!
Hey,
Yay!
fine.
You know, I like ignorance a lot. Yeah, ignorance is bliss. So, let's get started with some of the new teams that started up here. Initially, one everyone tends to care about because of the hype, Qiao Gu. So, who are the players? Let's see the histories. Let's start with Kelsey.
Okay, so one thing that I want to establish is TnT's history because it's fairly long. And I was talking to Raz about this recently, and he was like, "What? That's the same guy?" It's actually really hard to keep track of him because he keeps changing his name. Like,
Yeah.
every week or so. He'll probably change his name halfway through the split. Don't be alarmed. No. But he used to play for LMQ as their AD carry before they moved to North America and chose Vasily, and Vasily was actually a sub. I think Vasily played one single game during 2013 LPL, but he also played on Livermore before that, so when the two teams formed, no one cares. But he played on LMQ, and
Nice fast forward.
so that was his... LMQ was the sister team of Royal Club, so his...
Last season, which kind of made him like this ridiculous god tier jungler who had to carry the rest of his team. So, but I think Qiao Gu has better individual players. Like I feel like he has a arguably better supporting cast around him, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Swift
arguable.
isn't-
I think
Okay.
like
I think it's
pretty much
Yeah.
every
I
single
think
role
you're
is
right,
better.
but, like, yeah, it's like you know, you go down the line, and
I feel like-
I would say
I think mid is about even between World Elite and I don't know. I think Donby is like good,
Donby-
but not like
I
yeah.
think they
Like,
both
great.
have
It's
champion
not, like,
pool
exceptional.
issues, but
yeah.
yeah.
they're both like pretty good at what they do in terms of
Yep.
laying out play on the
Yeah.
champions that they play.
yeah. So
and
I mean,
doing B. Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
oh no, I was just gonna say like that's how I see them. I see them as they're gonna have really similar issues to W, where their actual playstyle depends on either can Swift like carry, just straight up flat out carry them, or are their individual laners just gonna like rely on mechanical outplays? Because I haven't really
Yep.
seen anything super interesting from them in terms of strategy.
And I really want to see more games out of these guys to test their consistency because they did have a really good third-party run before the split of the LPL. But for instance, like I really want to see how well V matches up against other top laners as the series goes on to see if he can consistently play at that level. Because like yeah, okay, it was good that he got a good test against LGD's top laners, but that was without direction of their shot caller. And additionally, that was against. I mean, it was Jiang top for the other set. So and
Yeah.
Jiang was like not looking very good, and he just occasionally died at random. So it's not a very good gauge of their performance. I really want to see their week 2 performance and then go off of that.
Why is she on top? Because OMG loves to roll swap, and they think that everyone can do it, even though they can't.
And it's so bad